Instagram Live. My name is Makita Waterman. I'm the CEO of Top Writing Services Incorporated, and for the past 7 years I've been running a marketing and writing business. I wanted to talk to you today about diversity and inclusion. This is usually a topic that I have been straying away from for a good year, especially when the pandemic happened and a lot of conversations were happening online. The reason why I decided to wait a year to talk about this from a marketing and a branding perspective is I really wanted to do what the top marketers are really supposed to do: listen to the conversations on all platforms, not just the news and social media, but listen to friends and listen to families and hear out other entrepreneurs that don't necessarily look like me. I'm just going to move this. Okay. And hear what people are saying, entrepreneurs are saying about certain things that came up last summer, especially the George Floyd and the black box that everybody was doing. I chose to take a stand back approach with respect to that because I have my own opinions. But more importantly, I'm here to talk about business and marketing and a lot of the common mistakes that I see entrepreneurs of all groups. It doesn't matter if they are not just entrepreneurs, but businesses of all backgrounds, whether the CEO is black, white, LGBT, or whatever. But diversity, marketing, and inclusion is something that we don't necessarily hear about, but we do hear a lot about the issues and how public figures, celebrities, and people like you and me coming out on our platforms and speaking out. So I really was hoping that this conversation can be really full and honest and juicy and an opportunity to learn, because that's what we're all doing in this new space of people speaking out about injustices in companies, kind of putting it in their marketing. So common mistakes, I'll start off with that. I'll start off with the juicy stuff. So just recently, Kendall Jenner, she came out with this vodka, I believe a Mexican vodka. And this is not the first time that Kendall Jenner came out with some kind of brand deal, but now she has her own alcohol. And the issue that I was noticing based on feedback from Latino-speaking people, whether they're Afro-Caribbean Latino, meaning Black Latin-speaking people, or European, like more Spanish, Caucasian-looking Spanish-speaking people from Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic, etc., or even Mexicans, right? Because this is a Mexican drink, and this is the mistake that Kendall made, is coming up with this whole marketing campaign, and which she's in a cornfield somewhere in Northern California, or Mexico, and there are Mexican workers that are in the field picking the fruit or the vegetable to make vodka. I'm not actually sure what it is. I'm not a mixologist. But the issue with this particular campaign is Kendall Jenner had the Mexican braids. She seemed a little darker with her complexion and was kind of emulating a Mexican woman, actually in the advertising, versus just paying a Mexican woman to be in the advertising, and then having these workers that were elderly people literally working hard in the field, and she just comes through on her pony or her horse and all of a sudden drinks this juice, kind of taking on this persona that has nothing to do with her culture or her understanding of what those family-owned businesses in Mexico are going through to pick those fruits and vegetables for the vodka and other commodities and fruits and vegetables that they sell out to the US, Canada, etc. So it wasn't even just the imagery and the marketing, but there was a big backlash from Kendall Jenner's Mexican liquor drink, because she obviously comes from a Kardashian family. Her father was an NBA player. Her mother married into wealth. And then you have the whole thing about Kim Kardashian and how she became famous with that tape with Ray J, so on and so forth. And them, people, including not just Latin-speaking people, but just people in general, not putting that advertising or that commercial together with the lifestyle that Kendall Jenner really lives, which is somewhere in Calabasas in a mansion and walking down the runway as a model and using nepotism, her family connections to have some kind of a platform and a brand and a name for herself, which she didn't necessarily initially work for. It was just kind of easily handed down or, influenced from her family, Kris Jenner, etc. So that was a big backlash, and I see a lot of this as well. I'm going to stay on the Kendall Jenner since it's kind of easy, because her and her family consistently keep making these cultural appropriation mistakes. So you remember the Pepsi commercial with Kendall not too long ago. This was around the time that there was a lot of protests and stuff for Black Lives Matter. And in her Pepsi commercial, she walked through kind of like a walk down the, some kind of BLM kind of thing or justice kind of march. She walked through, she drank a cup, and then the cops all of a sudden stopped the riot and everything was peace. And that was an issue in itself. So the reason why I'm bringing up these two issues is I believe that sometimes small businesses and companies really are tone deaf to the issues that are impacting the target audience that they want to reach and buy their products. And as a result of that happening, people are noticing these things and proudly speaking out about the lack of compassion, the lack of understanding that is being put into these advertisements, and confusion on the cultural side of things when it's totally the wrong way to reach diverse groups of audiences, especially in time-sensitive times where people are actually able to speak out on Twitter and go viral, even though they have 2 followers, right? So the reason why I just wanted to use these mistakes off the top of my mind is it's always good to have employees or to hire a third-party marketing agency or a consultancy, etc., to look at your branding or commercial ideas and be honest with you as to whether groups of people that you're trying to target to will be offended. And the worst thing that can happen is you put hundreds of thousands, hundreds of dollars, or millions of dollars into a campaign. You get an influencer, you get an actor, a model, an actress. Let's say in the Pepsi situation, they got Kendall Jenner to come out and speak, not speak, but actually be the face of the BLM, world peace and all this other stuff, when it doesn't make sense. So when you're putting your models and you're putting your influencers into these commercials or these videos on your Instagram or your TikToks, you really have to ask yourself, what does this person stand for? So before you do your marketing for diverse and inclusion and LGBT or whatever, people with disabilities, you're trying to bring in new target audiences to expand your business, be careful who you choose as your influencer. Be careful who you choose as the spokesperson for your company. Don't just glaze over their TikToks or their Instagrams or their LinkedIn and think that that's all there is to a human being. There's so much more to an individual. I would even tell some companies that have the budget, do background checks on influencers and people that you choose to be in your commercials and in your brand deals. Hi, Cosmo, how are you? And make sure that you're doing background checks on people just to make sure that whoever's representing your brand, you're not going to offend. Hey, how are you? How's your Sunday going so far? It's good to see you. That you're not offending any groups of people when you're putting out these commercials and these videos. So earlier I was talking about the Kendall Jenner Mexican vodka and how it was this whole storm of Mexican people were offended, and people were totally confused because Kendall Jenner came out with this Mexican vodka, but she's not Mexican. But in her commercial, she looks Mexican. And then the Mexican people in the commercial were like the help. They weren't sophisticated Mexicans. They were people working in a field somewhere. And she just came through on this horse, and people were totally offended. Out and about, I just want to say hi while I could. Oh, thanks for the support, Cosmo. I appreciate that. And so I use that as an example to say that some of the common mistakes that companies make is not doing more research on the influencers or the celebrities, or even just like the words that are used. I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was H&M. They did some kind of a photo shoot with children in the clothing, and it was really, really a big deal because they had this little black kid wearing a gorilla on his sweater. It was so bad. And then they had the Caucasian kid, and there was no gorilla on the Caucasian kid's sweater. So it's just like these little things like that I don't seem to understand can get through to publishing and actually end up on a billboard or a commercial in Times Square, New York, or in Eaton Center, Toronto. I don't understand how these problems can happen unless they don't have a person of color inside of the company saying, no, you need to pull this back. This is going to offend the LGBT or people with disabilities or black and brown people. So if there's anything that you want to do with your diversity inclusion, this is a big world. If you sell products online, you should be targeting audiences, but just keep in mind that when you're doing that, have somebody, if you don't have diverse employees, that's your choice, but hire a third-party marketing or a branding consultant or a company to look at this stuff before you publish it, because some companies can't afford a marketing mistake that offends a group of people. They could go out of business, and some companies can. They have PR, they have public relations agencies to help them spin problems and make it seem like it was a mistake, and that's understandable. But just be careful with the tone and the colors and the imagery that you put out. If you're going to have an influencer represent your brand, and it's like something of disabilities, maybe you're targeting people with disabilities, make sure that that person has not said anything about people with disabilities on Twitter 10 years ago. And you're not going to find that unless you and your team are doing research on these people, or, as I said earlier in this live, hire a private investigator. I know that sounds so crazy, but people in dating do it all the time. When they meet someone on the street or they meet someone in a dating app, if they're really, really getting serious, sometimes people are literally doing background checks on people they're just meeting on dating apps, because you don't know who people are, right? So that goes for the influencers that you choose, or the models you choose, or the business partners you choose, or the influencers you choose. If you have the marketing spend, pay for a private investigator to research these people before you put them on your video or your platform, and then 10 years they said something bad in a tweet about people with disabilities. And another common mistake, like let's take a look at John Legend's wife, Chrissy Teigen. I'm not sure if you know who Chrissy Teigen. She was on the cover of Swimsuit Illustrated, if I'm saying it correctly, like 10, 20 years ago, I don't know, 15 years ago. And she lost all her brand deals because people were digging up tweets from 10, 11 years ago about her cyberbullying minors and talking about children in really illicit, disgusting ways. And now she lost all her brand deals, right? So I think companies, you as an entrepreneur, a company can only do so much when you hire a spokesperson, an influencer, a model, a local athlete, whatever you can get on your team to, have an amazing marketing campaign. But I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, do an investigation on these people. I'm going to say it right now, do an investigation, because you could have a successful campaign, and then for whatever reason, somebody might be bored on the internet and they dig up information on this person. They find a tweet 20 years ago, and now your company looks terrible because this person said something about LGBT or people with disabilities or people of darker skin, and now that's attached to your company. So think a little bit ahead of time. Don't just look, oh, this person has 10,000 followers, I'm going to put them on my brand deal, I'm going to put them in all my videos for the next 6 months. If somebody really wants to dig deep and find something, and they find something, that could be really, really bad for your business. So just keep that in mind. So understanding people. So I know I just talked about Kendall Jenner and the whole Pepsi commercial thing, where she was walking through some kind of a protest, and then she comes through in the crowd of people, she drinks a Pepsi, and it all of a sudden seems like, issues in the world disappeared because she just came through. So you really have to understand the groups of people that you're dealing with when you're trying to expand your business and sell more products and services. Maybe you don't want to focus on single moms anymore. You don't want to focus on parents with 2 or 3 children. Maybe you want to focus on single people who are bachelors and bachelorettes, and they're living their best life and they don't want children. That's a totally different demographic and mindset that you're dealing with now, right? And that could be so difficult to accomplish and achieve because you went from targeting moms or targeting families with 2 or 3 kids, but now you're targeting foreigners or people that just came to Canada or the US, or now you're targeting, I don't know, wealthy people. It's a totally different mindset. So don't just think about the positive things about these people. Think about the issues that they're going through. And that really does help a lot, because in order for you to effectively sell your products and services, you do have to understand the issues that are going on with any target audience, no matter what religion they believe in or what their economic status is at the moment. You have to understand people's problems to put that in your marketing. And then obviously click link in bio to check out this or check out the shopping bin and da-da-da-da-da. So you constantly want to be surveying people. When people buy your products and service, send them an anonymous survey. And I'm not sure if you want to attach certain things like their race and stuff. That might offend people too. I know I've been noticing in the US, some people were complaining that as they're going through their job search, they notice that companies are asking for the breakdown of the race, or if they're Pacific Islander, if they're Native American, if they are all the kind of stuff. And some people get offended by that, because they're like, what does that matter when they are applying through the process? So if you have a survey and you're trying to find out the demographics, just be careful with the questions that you're asking. If you're trying to find out income or race or gender specific, find out if that's even legal in your province, in your city, in your state, in your vicinity, if you can even ask people stuff like that in marketing. Just recently, Facebook, they were kind of like acquitted from being allegedly they were using their algorithm to figure out people so that they could market to more people. Facebook just recently got off in federal government lawsuit charges of, I think, about 1.9 million or something like that. Because if you remember, Facebook was in a legal suit because people were saying the algorithm was taking a lot of data, like they were monitoring what people were doing off of Facebook, like shopping and apps, and even getting down into their photos and stuff like that. But I don't know how it happened. Facebook got acquitted of that. So be careful when you're surveying these groups of people to understand them more, because those questions within the survey might offend them. And I know it's so hard to say, easy to do. It might be for some of you. Some of you on the line might have disabilities, or you might be LGBT, or you might be a person of color. So maybe it might come easy to you. But if you're not, if you don't know anything about being disabled, just be careful for the stuff you put on. I know Nike in the 80s, I wasn't even around during that time, like the late 80s, but I remember that I think Nike got into an issue with a disability, but this was like in the 80s or the early 90s, and I believe they had some kind of a commercial, and it was just an offensive to the disability community. And Nike usually is spot on with their diversity and inclusion in their marketing. I'm not exactly sure how they made that mistake, but that was a different time and day, so just be careful. I am also open to answering any questions that you have. I know this diversity inclusion thing, it's a very, very great topic for a lot of people, even for myself. But that's why I took a year to actually come out and talk about this, because I wanted to look at TikTok, look at Instagram, look at YouTube. I wanted to kind of see what people were saying before I actually came out with this topic on diversity and inclusion marketing. And it is confusing because I am a person of darker shade. Obviously, you can tell that, but my experience is different than someone who looks like me who lives in the US, someone who looks like me who was born in the Caribbean, born in Africa, born in the United Kingdom. So like my quote unquote African or Black experience is different than other people. So I could put something out. Believe it or not, you could put something out that is true to you as whatever race you are, and people could still get offended. But that's your truth. So if you are putting something out that's personal, I could put something out and say, oh, when I was growing up, I didn't receive a lot of racism. I just didn't. I think I got called the N-word once in my life, and that was like when I was in my second or third year of high school. Now I could go down the street and talk to someone else that looks different than me, but is my same race, and they could be like, oh, I think you're lying. How could you go your whole life and only once somebody called you the N-word? That's my truth. But if I put that in a marketing campaign, you also have to remember that you can put out your truth and people could still be offended by what you're saying. But your experience is different than the experience of somebody that looks like you who was born in a different age or different household or a different part of the world. So don't be afraid to tell your truth. People can be offended, but that's your truth. As long as you hold on to that truth and you're sharing it to impact somebody. But just remember that could be offensive to somebody too, right? And the only way that we as individuals can really understand each other more with this whole diversity and inclusion marketing is truly by paying attention to the algorithm, paying attention to the news stories, paying attention to people's feedback on all apps, taking time to listen to somebody's experience, even if it's a short video, and just consuming that information and just being neutral about it as an entrepreneur. Of course, there are things that I see online that really upset me. Just recently, as I was scrolling through TikTok like 3 days ago, there was a First Nation lady somewhere in Eastern Canada, and she did a duet with one of the, I don't remember this man, he's a Sikh, he wears a turban. I think he was trying to be a prime minister of Ontario, but didn't work out. But he's still out there speaking about issues, and I think he's a lobbyist and all this other stuff. And I watched that video, and it was a 15-second video, and I cried because this whole thing, all these things that are coming out with the Indigenous people, it speaks to my heart. So, watching little things like that and understanding the pain points and issues that people are going through can really help you to avoid common diversity inclusion marketing mistakes. It can also help you focus on something, a problem, and then get local influencers or people online that you can attract to be the voice of that issue. Not necessarily to sell more products and services, but a part of the branding that we hear you, we see you, LGBT, we see you, disability individuals, we see you, Black and brown people, we hear you, everyone else who's going through it, women, disenfranchised financial people, we see you. This is our branding campaign, not because we want to make more money, but we see you. We might not understand you. We might not feel your pain, but we see you, right? So you can also do a mix of that with your diversity and inclusion marketing as well. And I personally, if it's very, very touchy, start off with a branding campaign first before you start targeting other audiences. And I'm saying that now when I think about it, because if you start off with the branding, and you talk about, George Floyd or global warming or the sea level is rising, you start off with a campaign, you can actually start getting insights and information from people in the comments and the messages, and then you can start learning about their issues, and people will be vulnerable with you if they believe what you're sharing, if they agree with what you're sharing. And then with all that information, then you can do your marketing campaign, which will not offend anybody, because for 3 or 6 months or 2 to 6 months, you did that branding where you talked about the sea levels rising and animals going extinct. I know that's not a part of diversity and inclusion, but I guess we can add that in there anyways. And now with all this information and the conversations you've had on live streams and people, recognizing you in public now that everything's open, you could really get a better understanding of those groups of people and that target audience. So then your marketing can be effortless. It doesn't offend, it empowers. It doesn't insult, it inspires. It doesn't drag people down, it lifts people up. And now your company is not just the one-dimensional or the two-dimensional company that just focused on the safe communities, but now we're going into unsafe territory of different groups of people that now will refer you to more people in their community. Hi, Shirley, how are you? And so that's it in a nutshell when it comes to diversity and inclusion marketing and branding. I am here to answer any questions that you have. Maybe you saw something on social media that you didn't like and you want to get my feedback. But the only mistakes that could quickly come to mind that are just recent is the Kendall Jenner, the Mexican vodka that she's coming out. A lot of Mexicans are offended by that. And other people that aren't Mexican are like, what does she know about Mexico and Mexican vodka? Does she even go to Mexico? She lives in Calabasas, California, and she lives a very prepped, safe life. Does she look like a Mexican in the commercial? Like, there's so many ways that people can offend people, and they mean well. But I think like people like Kendall Jenner, I think that's a second or third or fourth. That whole family, the Kardashian family, that's such like a great topic I don't want to get into. But I feel like they consistently keep doing things for clickbait. And I think that they constantly make money off of appropriating people's culture and sometimes even insulting people. And I consciously believe they know what they're doing because they have most of them have black children, right? Kim has biracial children. Courtney and sorry, not Courtney, but Chloe and I think sometimes people do stuff like that because it gets negative press. I do believe some people and companies think negative press is good press. I don't agree with that. Oh, I don't know about Kendall. Yes, they are doing it on purpose. Yeah, it's unfortunate because she could have done a vodka that was an Armenian vodka. I think that would have been interesting. I think people would be like, oh, I've never been to Armenia before. Why don't I check out Kendall's? But she made it a Mexican vodka. And then the Mexican people on social media, especially on TikTok and YouTube, they were offended because they're like, there are Mexican families who have farms in Mexico who have their own vodkas, and they can't even get that much press. But now she's jumping on the Mexican bandwagon, but she's not Mexican. She's never publicly dated a Mexican. People were just like confused in the commercial. You could probably YouTube it if you're interested later. But she looks like a Mexican, like she's wearing 2 braids and she's riding on a horse in Mexico. And the Mexican people, I was saying earlier, in this commercial, they're not like the elite Mexican businesswomen. They are literally workers. So she's just coming through this field of fruits and vegetables, and the Mexican people are sweating, picking the fruits and the vegetables. It was just so insulting. And that's not the first time. It's the second. I'm not saying I don't like Kendall Jenner. I think she's a beautiful girl. I've seen her on Vogue. She's a great model, but you can't make this stuff up. You can't make a mistake with all the money that family has. I think she did it for clickbait, but it's insulting because those Mexican people who have ancestors who are trying to sell vodka outside of Mexico, and they probably can't. But, anyways, you can't stop people from doing what they want. But when you have a negative intention to get a negative response, you're not just offending the Mexicans, you're affecting their culture, you're insulting their ancestors, you're insulting their family and friends who are trying to put out a drink and they can't, right? Do you have a YouTube channel? Yeah. Oh, thanks for joining, Dominic. I didn't even see you. Yeah, if you click link in bio, you'll be able to check out my YouTube channel. But I'm so glad that all of you have joined me. Diversity inclusion is here to stay. I can tell everyone on the line here is a person of color. And if you're running a business, just do your research and pay attention to the trends. Like I said, it took me a year to come out on social and even start talking about diversity and inclusion because I have my own opinions about stuff, but I also have to be careful how and what I say to people. I have to be sensitive to different groups, and I really want to take a year to just study the George Floyd issue, the BLM stuff, the stuff that's happening in Africa, the LGBT, the disabilities, and the South Asians, and people are coming out more, right? And the next generation, they see everything and they're speaking out, and companies need to do better. If you have a business and maybe you can't afford employees, if your business starts to scale, hire the whole group of people. If you're going to hire one group of people that look like you or don't look like you, you could get pulled up for that too. But you have to live your truth, right? But I'm just using this as an example because, I don't know how some of these multi-millionaires and billionaires can put out content and not realize that they are offending people. Trends related to, where do you go to find trends online? Trends related to diversity and inclusion. I believe surely the best platforms are really TikTok. And I think TikTok is the best place to go because people are unfiltered. I do see stuff on LinkedIn, but people are a little bit more professional and they hold back a bit because it's kind of like a corporate app. where startup founders and CEOs and work-related and business-related people go. I think Instagram has good stuff, but I really think, hey, thanks for joining. I really think the best place to go is YouTube, of course, because YouTube has everything. And then I think also TikTok, because people are just way more unfiltered and honest, and people are literally crying about insults from ads, and people are angry, and there's a lot of sensitive information on TikTok, but I think the true voices are on TikTok and Twitter. TikTok and Twitter, but if you like videos, TikTok for sure. All right, Shirley and Dominic and everyone else on the line, Cosmo, if you're still there, thank you so much for joining me on this live stream to talk about diversity and inclusion in marketing. I will be uploading this full video on my YouTube channel tomorrow. I think I might have to upload it again or upload it on IGTV if it doesn't allow me to download it. But I really want to thank you for joining. Thank you for your questions. And if I feel that more information is coming out that can help you with respect to this thing, because there's always going to be stuff coming up, right? Like the world is looking for problems so that companies and public figures can do better. So if I find that there's something else, I'll have another one next month. But stay tuned, and I'll let you know on Wednesdays what I'm going to do the following Sunday. Thank you for joining, everybody. Stay safe, and I hope to chat with each and every one of you soon. And if you have any questions, you can send me a DM. Take care, everyone. Bye.